now walking in one of the streets that was part of the Florence ghetto, where we presume that Jewish merchants may have lived during the Roman period. Though there is no evidence of this presence of Jews in Florence at that time, we are certain of their presence from a diary of Benjamin of Tudela, who found a Jewish community here when he visited the city of Florence in 1159. Doctors, merchants, money lenders are mentioned in the 14th century. In the beginning of the 15th century, we still have mentions of their presence. In 1396, the municipality of Florence permitted Jews to practice banking. That has been the most important job of the Jews here in Florence. An assembly of the Jews of entire Italy met here in Florence in 1428, and gathered funds to help Pope Martin V, and this help to the Pope gave to the Jewish community all over Italy a sort of protection. That was a very important point of the history. And then city authorities requested Jewish bankers in 1430 because they believed that they would be easier to control than their Christian contemporaries with the help of the money of the Jews. Finally, the Jewish community here was officially established in 1437. Since that time, we have a normal, still community, Jewish community here in Florence. The emphatic writing that you can see up over that archway here in Piazza della Repubblica reminds us the huge urban interventions that transform the old medieval center of Florence in a modern center of a town that was in train to become the new capital of Italy. And you know, Florence was capital of Italy for almost 6 years, since 1865 up to 1871. A large project, this one of the transformation of the medieval center, that lasted 30 years and finished in 1895. As the writing says, the ancient center of the city restored to new life from age-old squalor, 1895. But this writing says nothing about what these interventions cancelled here forever. And in the midst of a large medieval complex of old buildings with all the towers of the prominent families of Florence, here there was the entire ghetto where the Florentine Jewish community lived for almost 400 years. But nearby the 19th century writing that we have seen here, we could see before the demolition another writing that could explain us why this ghetto was prepared and when it happened. And it deals with Cosimo de' Medici, and we speak of 1571. This is the text of that old writing that can no more be seen. Cosimo de' Medici, Grand Duke of Tuscany, and his son, Francesco, motivated in all things by great pity, would that the Jews be enclosed in this place, segregated from the Christians, but not expelled from town, so that through good example they might come to bow their stubborn necks to Christ's light yoke. Year of the Lord, 1571. Few words to say that the idea was, we want to keep the Jews living in the middle of the Christian town of Florence, so that the example of Christians might convince them to convert to Christianity. Florence ghetto was square-shaped, a very small portion of the town here, exactly in the middle. Two gates of access, only two gates of access that used to be closed at night. As it happened in all the ghettos of all over Europe, Venice, Krakow, and so on, we can imagine that since they had a limitation of space, the only way to receive inhabitants was to build houses one close to the other and go up like small skyscrapers of that period. There were two synagogues here. One, the Italian synagogue built in 1571 at exact the beginning of the ghetto, and the second, a Spanish Levantine, means Easter one, built at the end of the 16th century when the Spanish portion of the community established a right to live here in Florence. There were also Jewish schools, a butcher, a bakery, other social and philanthropic organizations. As you look around, you can see no evidence, no memory of that presence of the Florence ghetto. We have just few stone records in some museums in Florence, and then objects that are in the Synagogue Museum and papers describing, and some photos you can see that can describe how the ghetto was at the end of the 19th century when it was, so all the Jews were sent out of it. Nevertheless, we can have a walk in the roads and squares where we know the ghetto was located and shortly remember the history that was a glorious history of the Jewish community in Florence. By the way, I can say that we are really in the very center of Florence. This column here signs exactly the middle of the Roman camp that was the beginning of the city of Florence. So the two main roads, the Decumanus and the Cardus, join exactly here. So we are in the very old center of Florence. We have to say that the fate of the Jewish community here is deeply linked with the fate of the Medici family in Florence, because there was a deep help given by the Jews to the Medici family, lending them money in order to do all their, works. And Lorenzo il Magnifico defended the Jewish community from expulsion and from the aftermath of preachings against the Jews that happened here in Florence by Bernardino da Feltre, who started a very harsh preaching against the presence of Jews. Another very difficult time for the Jews here was the moment of the presence of Girolamo Savonarola, who introduced here in Florence a very strong Catholic theocracy. And one of the results of this strong Catholic presence was the claim to expel Jews from Florence. But the Medici managed to bring them back in 1512. And this was another period. In the time of Lorenzo de' Medici, Jewish scholars and humanists were very relevant in the Renaissance period. We have the names of Yochanan Alemanno, Abraham Ferissol, Elia del Medico, who used to teach Hebrew language to the most prominent philosophers as Pico della Mirandola here in Florence. 1537, Cosimo de' Medici gained power in the Florentine government, and he had the advice, the help of a very prominent Jew, Jacob Abravanel, a Sephardic Jewish banker. Thanks to the advice of Jacob Abravanel, Cosimo de' Medici decided to receive and accept the presence of a new community, a new Jewish community coming from Spain, coming from Portugal, and they called Levantines. They were more rich, they were richer than the Florentine Jews here, and this was the start of the growth of the Spanish Jewish community here in Florence, And it was a very special portion of this community here. As we said, the life of the Jewish community was deeply joined with the success and the history of the Medici family. And we said also that the Medici protected the Jews. But in 1570, when Cosimo became Grand Duke of Tuscany, because of his respect in front of the Pope, had to change his policy towards the Jews for the worse. And this is the reason why he decided to organize a ghetto here in the center of Florence, 1571. The Jews in Tuscany numbered at that time only 795, according to the official Jewish census of 1570. And they included some activities, privilege granted to them since 1547. And we can say that their financial network here in Tuscany was essential for the Tuscan economy, and Cosimo knew very well that the decision to expel completely Jews from Tuscany would have been an error, a problem for Tuscan economy. So we can say that his protection for Jews here in the ghetto was also a gesture of pragmatic liberalism in comparison to the expulsion that happened in Spain and Portugal. Though it was a very difficult life here in the ghetto, in such a small place, the life of Jewish community continued to flourish here inside the ghetto. And the Jews were allowed to elect their own council, and rabbinical courts had jurisdiction over the life here inside the ghetto and recognized by the state authorities. And so there was a sort of respect. There were some restrictions about Jewish trade. They received limitations for their trade only over Tuscany. Then a certain level of tolerance existed for the Jewish community, despite being forced to live here in the ghetto. During the rule of Cosimo's son Ferdinand I, Jews were allowed to expand their trade to the east. So somehow we can say that there was a good possibility of life here. There was here a fountain, we said, the square of the well, and there were also two synagogues, as we said, the Spanish and the Italian synagogues. And the community decreased step by step here in number, and at the end of the 18th century they were less than 1,000 persons. The Jews of Florence received the first emancipation during the Napoleone conquer of Italy for few years, but then the Grand Duchy was restored in 1814 and the Jews had to return and to live here inside the ghetto. In 1848, the ghetto we have visited was abolished after 278 years of life. And so a new city center was constructed where the ghetto had been. And it was near to arrive a new golden period, a real golden period for the Jewish community of Florence. And a first witness of this new prominent position of Jews in Florence deals with the biggest Franciscan church in the world, the Florentine Basilica of Santa Croce we are in front of. Because in 1860, the architect Niccolò Matas, who was a Jew from Ancona, a town on the Adriatic Sea in Italy, was commissioned to enrich the facade of the basilica that was not here in that times. And this contract stipulated that no work has to be performed on Saturdays, since he was a Jew. And the priests were aware that he was a Jew. And in fact, we can see a big Star of David in the facade up, and it's something like a new sign of the Jewish presence in Florence that lasts until today. Is a very touching thing. And the compromise was reached because he somehow intended to be buried here in the church, but since he was a Jew, it was not possible. And then a final compromise was found, and he lies here in front of the basilica, and he's entombed in a marble sarcophagus, explaining and telling that he, Niccolò Matas from Ancona, he was seen as he was allowed to be buried by the national parliament here in front of Santa Croce because he had prepared this wonderful facade that can be seen from many parts of the town. In 1861, Florence became part of the Kingdom of Italy. And this was exactly a new step because now the Jews could live freely as Italian citizens in their own town of Florence. They call it Emancipation. And the first step of this emancipation was the decision to build a new, big, smart, really important synagogue in Florence. And this is our last step of our visit. A golden period that lasted from the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century, before the terrible disaster of the Second World War. And there was also the presence of a college, il Collegio Rabbinico Italiano, that was transferred here from Padova, headed by the Rabbi Samuel Hirsch Margulis. He was a very prominent rabbi, and he had a Zionist ideas, means the reconstruction of the nation of Israel after, a lot of efforts, and this really happened, 1948, immediately after the end of the Second World War, the United Nations decided to have this new state, giving a proper nation to the Jews of the world. Following the emancipation of Jews, the community of Florence participated with great vitality in the cultural life here of Florence. We have a lot of important figures that were contributors, part of the life of Florence. We can mention Bemporat Publishing House, that is a very important publishing house of that times. A poet, Angelo Orvieto, the art historian Paolo d'Ancona, and then other persons. And finally, we can also mention Amedeo Modigliani, who is a very famous painter of Italy, that he was from Livorno, Legor, but he has Jewish origins. We can say that one of the signs of this vitality is that in 1931, the number of Jews living in Florence was up to 3,000 persons. A second very sad time for the life of the Jewish community here in Florence after the one when Cosimo first closed all of them in the closed space of the ghetto was the persecution that arrived during the fascist and Nazi regimes also here in Italy. In 1938, the fascist regime enacted racial laws which deprived Jews of work and schooling and other restrictions. During the fascist and Nazi regime, Jews received a lot of persecution since they were considered an inferior race. In September 1943 then, the Nazis effectively seized control of a large part of Italy, and that was the time in which real concrete persecution started against the Jews. In total, 9,000 Italian Jews were deported or killed in the Nazi camps in Germany and Poland, and more than 500 of them were from Florence. Most Jewish families in Florence lost a family member during that period. A total of 247 Jews were deported to Auschwitz, among them the leader of the community of that time, Rabbi Nathan Cassuto. We can read all their names in a monument, in a memorial that can be found by the Synagogue. Only 13 among the 247 returned home. And Santa Maria Novella station had a role in this deportation of the Jews, because this was the track, the platform from where the Jews were deported to Auschwitz. And that's why we have now a striking memorial sculpture and a steel plaque here at platform 16. The sculpture consists of a length of railway track obstructed by several blocks of stone that are split with a metal spike, and it honors the memory of the trainloads of Jewish people and other Italian citizens that were transported from this platform to some Nazi concentration camps during the Holocaust. We also have to mention that Nazi looted and vandalized Jewish properties here in Florence, and the Great Synagogue, for example, was damaged and transformed in a sort of store place and nearly blown up by Germans when they left Florence. Most of its great art was stolen and lost forever. By the end of the war, the Jewish population that had become so big in the previous time was reduced to less than 1,600. Visiting and describing the big and rich synagogue, we have on the left the first new synagogue after the Emancipation, Jewish Emancipation in 1961. We can say a few words about the Jewish community here in Florence today. After the disaster of the Second World War, the Jewish process of rebuilding, the synagogue was restored to its former glory. We are going to see. Then a home was built in 1970. Massa Carrara, Pistoia, Prato and Siena. And finally we can mention the hotel here, Arizona, and most of all the only kosher restaurant that we have here in Florence, Roots, that you can have a very good, tasty meal, Jewish meal in Florence. We are here in the garden in front of the facade of the synagogue. Just to mention here the memorial of the victims of the persecution of the Nazi that we have spoken about in the platform 16 in the station, the railway station. And we are now going to have the visit of the synagogue, and I'm very glad to introduce you with the Chief Rabbi of Florence, Gadi Piperno, who will lead us in the visit of the synagogue and will tell us something about the life of a Jewish community, especially on Saturday. So thank you for accepting and helping us.
Big pleasure.
Congia mia, cicec de mi cabeza. La luna me se escureció, la mar se hizo preta. Congia mia, cicec de mi cabeza. La luna me se escureció, la mar se hizo preta.
Allora, so welcome in the big synagogue of Florence. As you already know, the synagogue was built in 1882, and this is a big synagogue. Actually, the big synagogues in Europe and all over the world is somehow a new thing in the Jewish story. The synagogue at the beginning is intended to be a place where the Jews, the men, come to pray 3 times a day, because this is the duty we have, to pray 3 times a day in certain periods of the day, and just men. Women have the duty to pray, but they can pray somehow whenever they want. They don't have a certain time for the prayer. So the synagogue at the beginning was sometimes it was only a little room where men gather to pray each day, every day. Only during the centuries, in the histories of Jews, in a certain time, the synagogue began to be the center of the Jewish life of the Jewish community, for many reasons. Actually, the center of Jewish life are the school, are the yeshiva, the place where people study. But for some reason that it's not easy to explain now, the synagogue became the center of the Jewish life. And so also women wanted to go to the Bet Knesset, to the synagogue. And for this reason, but we have a problem. For the Jewish laws, men and women cannot pray together. They must be separate. And women don't have the duty of the 3 prayers of the day. And that's why, and this is the duty only of men, as we said before. And so, this is the reason why the synagogue is structured like you see. The central part for men and a separate part for women. And please, let's see some important points of the synagogue. This is the place for men. In this synagogue, women stay there, in that part. Okay, in 3 big galleries. This is the bima, or in Italian synagogue, it's called teva, or bima. This is the place where the chazan, which is the man who leads the prayer, stays and give the public prayers. Of course, everyone has its own prayer, and there are parts that are said personally, but parts of the prayer are public, like in many other religions. And so, this is the place for the person who leads the prayer. Now you see that there is another bima over there. This is only for COVID reasons, because it's problematic for a singer to sing towards people. It can be dangerous. And so I decided, as rabbi of this community, to put a second bima in this place, yes, so that the singer sings towards the Aron, after I will tell you what it is, and not toward the people. If I make my sermon toward the people, I have to wear the mask. Otherwise, can be really dangerous. Behind this bima, you can see the Aron HaKodesh. That is somehow the cabinet of sanctity. Which sanctity? Inside this Aron, we can find the scrolls of the Bible. And these scrolls are read on the Saturdays, in the service of the Saturday, and in the service of other days in the week, on Monday and Thursday. And so, of course, this is the place of highest sanctities in the synagogue. You can see over there some chairs. These chairs were the chairs for rabbis at the beginning of the history of the synagogue until 30 years ago. Then was decided to, and this bima, the main bima, was in place of this secondary bima. And all the bench were directed, like somehow in a church, in this direction. Then a rabbi of our community decided that it was not so, let's say, Jewish, this kind of structure of the synagogue, because the Sephardic synagogue, it means the synagogue of the Jews coming from Spain, have a different structure. And the structure is the one you are seeing, so that the bima is in the middle, and people look toward the bima. And so they changed the structure of this synagogue in one night. I can tell about the synagogue. I want to tell you about two events. First event is that during the war, the Second World War, as you surely know, in Italy there was the power of Nazism. And the Nazis used this synagogue as a store for weapons, for many other things. When they had to leave, because the upcoming of British Army, American Army, and so they had to leave Florence, they decided to mine this synagogue, to put bombs in many parts of this synagogue, to destroy it. But there was a person, probably a carabiniere, living just in front of the synagogue, who understood what was going on. And once the Nazis arrived to Piazza d'Azeglio, that is few dozens of meters from here, he entered into the synagogue, and so he cut the cables, but he decided, was a very clever man, to leave only one. Why? So that they thought, the Nazis could think that actually the synagogue was destroyed, at least inside. They saw the glasses of the windows, so they understood that there was an explosion here in the synagogue, but they didn't understand that only one of all the other bombs exploded. And probably this is the reason why you can see this synagogue as it was built in 1882. A second very difficult event for the synagogue was in 1966, November the 4th. In this day, there was here in Florence a big flood. And the water in the synagogue arrived up to 2 meters. That means that the rabbis and people living here had the time to remove only the scrolls that were inside here and some other. But unfortunately, 99 scrolls were destroyed because of this of the flood, and very ancient scrolls of Torah. And this was a very difficult moment, of course, for all Florence and also for our community. I don't know if you can see with the camera, but we have the signature of of this flood, probably you can see that the color, the red, is different from here to here. Maybe standing far you can see it better. And this was the height of the water, so 2 meters. What you are seeing now is the table of Shabbat. The table of Friday night, actually, because for us the day starts in the evening before. What you see in this table is the candles, the lights of Shabbat. This is a duty mostly for women. It's a mitzvah of women, and we light 2 candles on Friday night. This is because in our houses there must be the light of the Shabbat, the light of Saturday, and with all the lights, the electric lights we can have in our house, this light is a very special light. This is the light of the Saturday, of the Shabbat. Then you see the wine and a glass. It's not a glass. It's a silver glass, and this is for the kiddush. It is the sanctification of the Shabbat that we make on the wine. And you see the bread. We have 2 loaves of bread, because this is to remember what happened in the desert when people ate the manna. And on Friday they received 2 portions of manna, and this was because on Saturday, on Shabbat, they could not go and gather the manna, because it's Shabbat. On Shabbat we don't work. And so, remembering that, we use 2 loaves of bread. And the most important thing is the table. This is a special table. In the table we put the plates for Shabbat, the spoons for Shabbat, and everything must be beautiful, because this is the most important dinner of the week. And we sit down, we stay not only half an hour, the normal time for a meal, but we stay 1 hour, 2 hours, and speaking, singing, to give joy to the Shabbat.
Okay, I want to really thank Gadi Piperno, the rabbi of the Jewish community of Florence. He gave us a very touching explanation of the synagogue, and also some very important moments of the life of a Jewish community. So thank you so much, and have a good time.
It was a big pleasure for me.
So we have reached the end of our journey in Florence, following the various steps, moments of the life of the Jewish community, and finally we came here to meet the leader, so the person who is now the rabbi, the responsible of the community. I can maybe point just one thing here that is very interesting. This is something like a dialogue, or even somehow a contrast between identity and the transformation, the development of history. Jews have always tried and managed to keep their identity alive, even in so different places wherever they have come to live and settled. And so here, also visiting this Jewish community here in Florence and studying shortly the history of this community, we have seen somehow the elements that are the point of reference of their identity. So the synagogue, their worshipping, the Torah scrolls, or their identity, the importance of their community. But on the other side, we have also somehow discovered that living here in Florence, they have somehow developed particular skills and particular, can say, aspects that are of the Jews living in Florence and not other parts of the world, can say like this. So a dialogue, and this might be seen and experienced also in our lives. We have our own self, our own identity, and our own gifts. And we share these gifts and we live this identity in the world, in the history, in the dialogue with others. And this is always a challenge, how to keep our identity alive, to put our identity in dialogue with other identities, and can say look for a continuous and say accept and receive and experience a continuous process of transformation and development. And this is also my wish for you, that you can also, with the example of the Jewish community of Florence, experience positive transformations and developments in your life.